Hello there, I'm Lloyd Evans and you're watching the John Cedars channel from The Bunker. And in this video, I have an extraordinary opportunity to speak to a man who has been through a lot and who knows what it means to suffer abuse. In this case, at the hands of one of the most sadistic mothers in history. I'm joined by Caleb Gilbert, whose foster sister, Victoria Spry, recently passed away. Caleb, am I right in saying that you're happy to shed a little bit of light on what happened in your quote-unquote family, for want of a better word, and how Victoria's passing has impacted you personally?
Yeah, that's absolutely fine. It's kind of impacted me in a way of what I think it should be. It should be made very obvious. I think, which I think it's safe to call Jehovah's Witnesses a cult. I'd say, and how they seem to cover things up. So obviously, after all of what happened to Victoria, as we discussed earlier, it seems like Eunice is still affecting people, even after.
I think that's the tragedy. Victoria Spry, I should mention, published a book, Tortured, in I think 2015, about her experiences. She did amazing work in her community, assisting the local social services with identifying children who might be being abused. So she did so much in her life, but as you point out, it feels as though Eunice is still inflicting damage years after it's happened because of the gravity of what she did and how it affected Victoria.
Yeah, definitely. I think obviously it still affects various people. I mean, I wasn't very big like up to date on how big the Eunice Spry case was in the ex-Jehovah's Witness community. Do you know how was it a big
I think
thing?
of quite a few ex-Jehovah's Witnesses are aware of the story. Well, it's been in the Daily Mail, and Victoria's passing's been in the Daily Mail, and the story of Eunice Spry. I mean, we were talking off camera. Eunice Spry has a Wikipedia page which points out that when she was sentenced, the judge told her that this was the worst case in his 40 years practicing law. Amazingly, we were talking about this off camera, despite this being, quote, the worst case in 40 years for this judge, Eunice Spry was sentenced in 2007, initially for, how long was it, 14 years. That then got reduced to 12 years, and then she ended up being released after only 7 years in 2014. So how can the worst case in 40 years be treated so frivolously, so that this evil, wicked woman who did unspeakable things to children that she was responsible for is now in the community once more?
It's, I mean, the fact what I think, don't quote me on this, but I think she was also given like a new name.
Oh, really?
I think, don't quote me on that, but
No.
if that's the case, I just think that's really, really wrong. You know, it's like, in my opinion, it's what she did is kind of similar to murder, especially to what's happened to Victoria. I mean, obviously she didn't directly murder her, but mentally,
It's hard to imagine. I mean, look, who knows exactly what was going through Victoria's mind at the fateful moment. I think we would do Victoria a disservice if we tried to second guess everything that she was thinking. But it's hard to imagine Victoria taking her life under these circumstances without the abuse being a factor. So yeah, I would agree with you there. It's worth pointing out that Eunice was jailed for, and please correct me if I'm wrong here, Eunice was jailed for her abuse of 3 children, the first 3 foster children that she assumed care of. And you came into the picture later on. And if I'm right in saying the way that she abused you was perhaps not as, for want of a better word, severe and grotesque as the ways in which she abused Victoria and her siblings. Would that be fair?
Yeah, I think with me, a lot of it was more mental torture. Right. So I was sort of brought up to be almost like a child. So, for an example, I didn't start school until year 9. And I don't know how to do simple things. Like, for an example, I don't know how to make a bed. I don't know how to tie shoelaces and things like that. So I end up having to buy shoes which are slip-ons.
Just for the benefit of viewers in America, you're saying you didn't start school until year 9. I'm trying to think what age that would be. So would that be like 12 or 13 years old?
Yeah, something like that, I think. Yeah, it's about that.
So you didn't go to school at all until you were 12 or 13 years old?
Yeah.
Right. So, well, that is abuse. That's really holding back your education, and in profound ways that I'm sure you're still experiencing to this day. I mean, you mentioned not knowing how to use shoes and that kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, like, also for an example, when I finally got to school, I realised what I wanted to do. I wanted to be an architect or some form of engineer, because I'm very obsessed with like cars and motorbikes and anything with an engine, really, so planes, boats, whatever. But I did want to do architecture, and then I got a U in my maths, which is unmarkable because I can't add up at all. And then I was like, well, that's out of the window then. So, so it's so yeah, I would say it's definitely affected my sort of what I wanted to do career-wise.
So when you say you got a U in your maths, would this be in, they call it something else now, don't they? But when I was in school, it was GCSEs. So was this for your? Yeah, so they marked you U for your maths for your GCSEs.
Yeah, so it was deemed unmarkable. I think I got an F in English. I did manage, the highest score I got, I did manage to get a D in cooking. The unfortunate thing is, my actual practicals at cooking were A stars, but because I couldn't keep up with the paperwork, I was only given a D instead.
So this will have really, I mean, it makes perfect sense that you would have such poor scores if you've literally been deprived an education until you're 12 or 13 years old. I mean, that's starting far too late. Presumably this has also impacted you in terms of employment and that kind of thing.
Yes, definitely. I mean, the only jobs I seem to manage to get are cleaning jobs. I mean, I've been unemployed for quite a while because I developed a bit of a drink problem to help me deal with certain things. So I used to work, but I can't now. If you know what I mean.
Sure. And so you describe sort of mental abuse, and obviously withholding, depriving you of education is obviously an abusive thing to do to a child. I don't want you to feel uncomfortable in being made to share things, but is there anything else that Eunice did that has scarred you?
I'm trying to think. Nothing which still affects me today,
Mm.
apart from I guess like alcohol and various problems like I said with like making beds and shoelaces and things like that. So apart from that, not massively. I think I just sort of blocked most of it out. What's the word? Subliminally.
Mm.
I think you sort of block a lot out without realizing it.
What I'm trying to understand is, why was her treatment of you different to her treatment of Victoria, Christopher, and the other child? What was different? Why did she? Because when we're dealing with those children, there's all sorts of horrendous stories about sticks being rammed down their throats. They had their faces rubbed with sandpaper. They were made to eat their own excrement and vomit. Why did she not do that with you, do you think?
What I reckon it is, I think it's because I was taken away at a lot younger age than my brother and my sister. So I think it was almost like she could sort of mold me a bit more. Like, so I think I was sort of treated as kind of the special child, I guess. So for an example, if I did something my sister would probably laugh at this, but so for an example, do you remember those big metal Tonka trucks? You know what you get using like sand pits and things like that. My sister still has a scar where I randomly threw one at her and it hit her there. But Eunice would treat it like, well, she'd say to my sister, well, you must have done something wrong to make him do that. So it was almost like playing us off
Oh,
each other.
right, okay. So she decided for whatever reason that you were like one of the favorites, and you
Yeah.
were somehow immune from the more evil things that she would do to the other children. Is that fair?
Yeah, I'd say that's a fair assessment. Yeah, definitely.
Mm.
Um, so, yeah, and obviously various other things. Like, I remember, so basically, like, so if I did something wrong, they'd get the blame for it, even though she quite blatantly saw me doing it, or something, or she'd say to my brother or sister, "Well, you weren't looking after him," or something like that.
And tell me about what I again can't get my head around is how she was doing all of this as a practicing Jehovah's Witness. So,
Yeah.
talk me through your memories of Jehovah's Witnesses and what it was like, kind of concealing. Presumably, you presumably you felt like you had to conceal all of this from what was happening in the congregation. Tell me what happened there.
It was kind of weird, like where I was taken from such a young age, I kind of thought it was normal. So, uh, so I remember everyone in the Kingdom Hall being very sort of, well, I was only a kid, so I remember it being fairly normal. I remember being not paying attention at all. Like I used to sit under the chairs and like sit and draw cars and stuff like that. Like I never used to pay attention. I remember it just. I remember being everyone was fairly friendly, but looking back on it, it's kind of. I suppose I view it differently now.
Do you think it's possible that Eunice had kind of programmed you to think that her treatment of the other children was somehow normal and nothing to complain about to anyone else?
Yeah, I'd say so. Yeah, definitely. So,
Sure.
Sorry if you can hear that. They randomly decided to do some drilling upstairs, which is not.
No, I can't hear it. I can't hear it. So I'm just curious because you mentioned before you use the word cult in relation to Jehovah's Witnesses. I suppose if there are any Jehovah's Witnesses watching this, they might say, "Oh well, Eunice Spry was a bad apple. There's bound to be bad apples in any religion. Why would you call Jehovah's Witnesses a cult just because your mother happened to be evil?" What would you say to that?
I would say it's more to do with how they deal with certain abuse cases. Like, I wasn't very aware of the whole how bad the Jehovah's Witness thing was until recently. So for example, if someone's abused, then they'll go and speak to an elder and they just get rid of that person and then they just sort of brush it under the rug like it didn't happen. And then they normally blame the child for doing it. You know, so for example, if someone was sexually assaulted, they would deem that child as deflowered or something like that. And then that child's looked down on. And it's things like that which I just don't think it's good, basically. You know, so
Do you feel that the congregation that you grew up in, and I appreciate from what you're telling me, you perhaps don't remember much if you were just kind of under the chairs playing. But do you think that your local congregation could have done more to stop Eunice from abusing you and your siblings?
See, because I was so young, it kind of, to me, it looked like they didn't really have an idea of what was going on. I mean, I could be completely wrong, you know, but excuse me. So I don't really know, to be honest. I think they could have maybe checked in a bit more. You know, like for an example, if they were going to do certain Bible studies or something, you know, they could knock on the house and see how things were going. Because I'm pretty sure someone must have clicked on what something wasn't right. You know, because we were all sort of, if I remember correctly, we were all dressed in, I think it's called Verbode, which is like designer French clothes and stuff like that. But if I was to look at that now, so say I was in the congregation now and I was to see a load of kids coming in matching clothes and everything like that, I'd be like, something's a bit off here, you know, kind of thing.
Yeah, one thing that was very striking for me when I was researching this story before our interview, I found some of the, I think it's Daily Mail articles about Eunice. And what's really shocking is to see some of the conditions that you and your family were living in. So I'm looking at the pictures now. I mean, we're talking filth. That's how it looks
Yeah,
to me, at least, when I'm looking at the pictures of just totally trashed rooms with piles of clothes and bags and goodness knows what, and dirty, very, very grimy, dirty conditions. And then I look at the pictures. There's marks all over the face, which I assume is from the sandpaper. Now,
yeah,
I've been an elder, and if you have children in your kingdom hall that are have marks all over their face, you start asking questions, you know. Or if you go round,
yeah,
because as elders you're supposed to carry out shepherding visits on a regular basis, and if you go round and you find that the house is, you can barely open the door because there's filth everywhere and there are children living there, again, there's just like a basic responsibility to start asking some questions and drill deeper as to what's happening here, you know, without giving elders a license to be intrusive. That's not what I'm suggesting. It's just that there's like a bare minimum that you expect, and that bare minimum would be children looking healthy and happy and living in a clean environment. And that is most certainly not describing the conditions that you were evidently in.
yeah, definitely, yeah. Yeah, I think they could have done what did you shepherding?
Yeah.
Yeah. See, I'd never heard of that. I didn't know they did that or were meant to do that. So, as far as I can remember, I can't really remember that ever happening. Really. So, I think, yeah, looking at it that way, then yes, I think they could have done a lot more to sort of deal with it, kind of thing.
I mean, it sounds as though, I mean, again, we're dealing with an extraordinarily evil woman. It's not inconceivable in my mind that she could have manipulated the elders to not visit, you know, or to think that they could do the shepherding some other way or whatever. Who knows? But I just look at those pictures and think, if you're an elder in this congregation, these would be red flags that there's an abusive situation, or at least a potentially abusive situation.
Yeah.
Have you spoken out much about this? Is this the first time you've really spoken out about your experience?
Yeah. Normally, I tend to sort of avoid talking about it.
Mm.
And then Julia gave me the opportunity to speak to you because I've been meaning to do it for a very long time, but I just never had the opportunity.
Well, yeah, I appreciate
yeah,
you speaking out about it. I'm curious to know whether you feel as though there's, I can imagine if I were in your shoes, I would be thinking, well, Victoria's gone now. I need to speak out on her behalf almost, you know, when it's I know she was your foster sister, but I would feel almost like I needed to, I know you can't speak for her, but make sure that she's remembered, basically. Is that something that you perhaps feel a desire to do? Make sure she's never forgotten for what she did and what she attempted to do to correct the abuse that she suffered.
Yeah, definitely. It's also because I didn't realise how much as I said earlier, how much damage Eunice did up to this point. So, but yeah, I would definitely like her to be remembered in a happy light. Like the problem with the media is, unfortunately, obviously, she's made famous for originally for a horrible reason, you know, the stuff what happened. But I find the newspapers and things like that seem to only concentrate on that and not her as an actual person. You know, like she was really into her dogs and things like that. You know, she loved Labrador so much, and I think it's nice little things like that which she should be remembered for, rather than something what Eunice did. Because I know this sounds a bit weird, but in my opinion, it kind of almost gives Eunice something to almost look at and be, I guess, in her sick head, something to be happy about, I guess.
You mentioned that Eunice might be under a new name now. We don't know. We do know that she was released in, I think, 2014, according to the Wikipedia page. So she's been at large in the community now for 6 years.
Yeah.
Presumably she was, I think you indicated earlier, she might have been let out early for good behavior or something.
Yeah.
Are you satisfied that someone like her can turn over a new leaf, or do you worry about children in the congregation where she's attending?
I wouldn't be worried about children in the congregation because I'm presuming everyone would have heard about it, and obviously, if anyone's got any common sense, they wouldn't let any children in her care. I'm definitely not happy the fact what you know, she got out and got a new life and everything like that, and I don't think people like that can turn around. You know, because obviously you see interviews with like serial killers and things like that. You know, and you know, some people be like, yeah, well, they made a few mistakes. It's like, yeah, but you wouldn't let that person back into the public. Does that make sense?
We did a live stream recently about the ICSA inquiry hearings. I don't know whether you've been following all that, but they had the hearings recently, and I've been involved along with a few others. And we had someone from an organisation called Mandate Now commenting, and Tom pointed out that currently the criminal justice system in the United Kingdom is heavily burdened, so that basically the prisons are overstretched, and that's why the sentences are so low. Or in the case of Eunice, she's been let out early. It sounds as though it's more of a case of British society's inability to keep criminals, rather than, oh, she'd completely changed and she was this wonderful person. It seems to me that if you are a cold, calculated, evil person like Eunice, you're going to find any loophole you can to exploit. You've got indefinite time in the prison system to plot your release or your freedom. And if she can see that there's a possibility of being released earlier by pretending that she's turned over a new leaf, it seems to me perfectly likely that she would pursue that. Again, this is really all speculation, but I suppose if I were in your shoes as someone who is grieving the loss of a foster sister, I would be absolutely enraged that the judicial system in the UK has let you down. That's how I would be feeling.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think there's some I don't really believe in stuff like the death penalty or anything like that. But I believe sort of, so, you know, I think in America they have something called the life sentence, don't they? I think that should be a UK thing.
You think she should never have been released at all?
Yeah, I'd say so. Yeah, I think people with that much malicious intent or negative energy, however you sort of want to word it, I don't think they're ever going to change, and they're always going to have that sort of mentality. Yeah.
And you mentioned earlier that as long as parents in her congregation know about her, you're fairly confident that she wouldn't necessarily be a threat. My concern is that if she's under a new name, it would be harder for parents to know. And even if the elders, which is what they say they do in certain situations, even if the elders told all of the parents, you need to watch out for her, you can still have situations, for example, if she goes to an assembly or a convention, or if you get a visiting speaker visiting the Kingdom Hall from a different congregation, where she can come into contact with children whose parents don't know anything about her. Does that concern you at all?
Yes, I'd definitely be concerned in that sort of situation. I didn't really think of it like that. I completely forgot about the big congregations thing.
Yeah, the assemblies and conventions. I mean, how on earth are elders supposed to follow her around to the toilet and, you know, follow her movements exactly and see what dealings she has with children? I mean, we're again dealing with a very, very evil, sadistic lady who seems to take pleasure from the suffering of children. I don't know how elders could police someone like that. Certainly not indefinitely until their death.
Well, the only problem is what people like that can be. I think you said earlier, manipulative. Obviously, people who normally, as far as I watch like serial killer documentaries and stuff like that, people who have evil intent are normally extremely intelligent, and I don't wish to give her any credit, but people who do that sort of thing are normally very intelligent, and they can sort of worm their way out of situation. So, yeah, I agree with you. I don't know how she would be sort of policed, kind of thing, by elders, what have you.
Sure. So, what's next for you? Do you feel as though you have more to say on this? Are you looking for opportunities to raise more awareness about the issues surrounding abuse, or is it purely a case of, you know, trying to heal from your own experience and build a life for yourself?
It's kind of a mixture between everything. You know, I'd like to obviously help to build a new life and things like that. But I also I'd like to make people more aware of what these sort of things happen, and I think I find lately I find mental health is sort of treated as a sort of taboo subject. You know, we don't talk about that or stuff like that. You know, kind of like in a way, it's sort of the same way as almost like back in the 50s and stuff. You know, when they had asylums and things like that. Not obviously quite as bad as that, but I still think it's a taboo subject, and especially with regarding suicidal tendencies and things like that. I think things need to be more addressed and more out in the open. Be spoken about more freely. I mean, like obviously you have stuff like suicide hotlines and things like that. But yeah, I know it sounds daft, but I became aware of this more when Chester Bennington from Linkin Park committed suicide.
Mm.
And I was like, and I watched an interview with him, and I was like, this needs to be spoken about more. And then obviously this happened, and then I think it kind of gave me more of a reason to speak about it.
Oh, definitely. I would agree with you there. There needs to be far more attention given to mental health.
Yeah.
And Victoria's tragic passing really underscores that. She was receiving help. I'm aware of that in the days or weeks leading up to her passing. But even so, you just never know what's tormenting people, do you? And when you're dealing with abuse as well, that's childhood abuse, that is, this can have a profound effect on people, can't it? It can't be underestimated. If there's anyone watching who is perhaps feeling that Jehovah's Witnesses are this wonderful organization where abuse never happens and there's no evil and everything's fine, what would be your thoughts on that?
But basically, I'm sort of I class myself as like an atheist / Satanist kind of thing.
Okay.
I guess so. Well, I suppose you'd say spiritualist then, you know, I do like ghost hunting and things like that. But I think with it's not just Jehovah's Witnesses, but I think people need to pay more attention. Because I never, if someone says, oh, I'm thinking of becoming a Jehovah's Witness, I'm not going to be the person to sit there and go, oh, no, you shouldn't do that, or what have you. I think as long as you're not hurting anyone, be happy in what you believe in, you know, kind of thing. But yeah, I think people in congregations should kind of take more sort of keep a closer eye out, you know, on certain things, like, you know, look little details, like, you know, does a child turn up with a bruise or, as you said, like scraping marks on their face, you know, and report that stuff to the police. Don't report it to the church,
the legal department. Yeah,
because the police are there for a reason, and you speak to the police about it, because obviously people like elders, they unless they want to take it to the police, then fair enough. But I find mainly it's sort of, I find in cults or religious groups, it tends to be sort of shunned away a little bit, you know, if that makes sense.
It does make sense, and I'm very grateful to you for confounding a stereotype there, because you've described yourself as a Satanist, and you've also said that if Jehovah's Witnesses want to be part of their religion, you don't have any objections. So that's probably not what most Jehovah's Witnesses would expect a Satanist to say.
Well, as I said, as long as religion isn't pushed in my face, then, so for an example, I'm a Satanist. I don't go around someone's house and go, oh, you should be a Satanist. You know, you should read stuff on Anton LaVey's Bible and things like that. I find that a little bit intrusive. I mean, even if Jehovah's Witnesses knocked on my door, I mean, I have made jokes in the past, you know, I should answer the door listening to Marilyn Manson or Full Chat or something, you know. But, you know, I make jokes like that, but that's just my sense of humour. But no, I just be like, sorry, I don't believe in that. If you want to have a chat about it, we can chat about it. But I'm not going to be in, like, I wouldn't be one of those people who sort of are rude to them.
What fascinates me is, I hope you don't mind me asking, but when you say you're a saint, when you say you're a Satanist, do you believe literally in Satan as a person, or do you adopt the intellectual position that all religions are the same? So you follow Satanism ironically to highlight the fact that there should be church-state separation and that kind of thing.
See, I believe in what I call the modern Satanism.
Mm-hmm.
So, if you've ever heard of Anton LaVey,
Heard of him, yeah.
Yeah, it's more, it's kind of more of a philosophy. So, you kind of, I'm trying to explain it. You kind of live by your own sort of, in my opinion, it's basic human kindness. So you don't believe in specific deity so much.
Mm.
It's more sort of self-belief. So you're your own God, you're your own devil. So it's up to you to control what you do, kind of thing. But the only things I disagree with Satanism is I don't really agree with the eye for an eye thing. So, for an example, if someone does you wrong, you automatically have the right to do wrong back. I don't agree with that because I've never really had a fight in my life. You know, I'm very sort of hippie-eyed, so I don't believe in violence or anything like that. My music taste might tell you different, but no, I think it's more of a philosophy more than anything. Satanism, it's important to make a sort of statement. So hence, you know, the upside down cross, and I have a mask which has an upside down pentagram on it and things like that. I think it's important to, how do I word it? It's important to show your individuality, basically. I think, you know.
Do you think your Satanism might be to at least some extent inspired by your musical tastes?
Definitely, yeah. Like when I first came out of Eunice's, I was looking for a way to rebel, and my brother showed me the album by Marilyn Manson, Golden Age of Grotesque. And the first song I heard, excuse the French, was called This Is the New Shit. And in my head, I was like, I didn't even know people were allowed to swear in music. I was like, this is amazing. So, you know, I started wearing, you know, black lipstick and, you know, the white face makeup and all that sort of stuff. So, yeah, I think a lot of it, I was kind of like, yeah, I'll just pretend I'm a Satanist. And then after a while, you're just sort of, you kind of just identify with it, basically.
You perhaps have friends who are Satanists, and
weirdly, I don't have any friends who are Satanists.
Okay, fair enough.
I have friends who are Christians and things like that, but when we meet up, we just agree not to talk about our beliefs. We just talk about other things, you know, and whether that's like, if I'm like, oh, Marilyn Manson brought out a new album, I'm not wishing to plug it, but it's really good. But you know, and they're like, oh, I'm not really interested in him, you know, because he burns Bibles on stage. And I'm like, okay, cool, we'll just talk about something else. You know, I'm not one of those people. I'm passionate about what I love, but I wouldn't push it in someone's face.
Sure.
So to speak. Like if they find heavy metal offensive, then I just won't talk about it.
I hope you don't mind me asking about your Satanism. It's just that I haven't actually interviewed any Satanists yet, and I can just imagine the uproar among some saying, now Cedars is interviewing Satanists. And I knew instinctively that you would be philosophically humanist, and it would be more a case of this being like a lifestyle thing and an expression of individuality and all that kind of thing. So I wanted to give you the opportunity to say all that rather than this be about you trying to subliminally influence people to worship the Dark Lord or anything like that. So.
Oh no, God no! You know, but believe in what you want. As long as you're happy, as long as you're not murdering people, I don't really care.
Sure, absolutely. Well, look, it's been an absolute delight chatting with you, Caleb. I hugely admire your positivity in the face of all that you've endured throughout your life, and I wish you progress and self-development and that kind of thing. You're remarkably positive despite everything that's happened to you. So please keep that positivity,
Well,
and I will follow your progress.
May I say one more thing?
Sure.
Due to positivity, I've always lived off an interview which I watched with Marilyn Manson, because they said to him, he seems pretty chirpy and happy on interviews, and I always live by this, and I think other people who have been abused should live by this as well. Which is, he said on the interview, I've never been victimised by the things what happened as a child. You know, so I think people should live by that sort of rule. Don't let it control your life as much as it can. Obviously, you know, people deal with mental health in different ways.
Indeed.
But I think that's important message.
Thank you for adding that. Yeah. Okay, thank you so much, Caleb. I'll let you go. But viewers, I hope you've enjoyed this interview. Please don't forget to subscribe to the John Cedars channel for more such interviews. But for now, thank you so much for watching.